stereo system, and you play a song, you'll actually broadcast on a radio wave that song. That's how a radio station works, right? And then in reverse, you can have an antenna that tunes into that particular broadcast frequency and receives the message, right? Well, so that's the traditional Tesla coil.
Right.
The Tesla coil is used usually to broadcast radio waves and eventually microwaves and television. And so my lab, I have developed a new type of Tesla coil that has windings that are so unique.
How big is it?
Well, it's the first one is probably only 1.5 feet tall.
Okay, not too big.
And that's the second one is the one that's so powerful that it shorts out all my meters. I charge my stones in that field, which the stones start to vibrate so intensely. The third coil, I actually broadcast the sound of the sun as recorded by NASA, and we talked about that in one of our last shows on water, and that vibration then sticks into the stones, which is a harmonic code. And I also put in some other really amazing harmonic codes into these stones, and they actually stay there. Now, think of this may sound really crazy because we know Marcel Vogel said that crystals will become the hard drives of the future, which are stones, and that at Stanford University they actually stored a movie of the Mona Lisa and a hummingbird, two separate movies in the same little crystal, and they believe these things will be the hard drives of the future. It's not so hard to believe because a DVD is just plastic, and there's a whole movie in there. Or there's a CD that has songs.
I know, it is bizarre, isn't it?
Isn't it bizarre? Plastic has memory. So if plastic has memory and it stays there, it doesn't
And you could read the memory with a little laser.
Now, this is where it gets really interesting. I know somebody right now, very, very high source, who claims that using lasers, that ancient stones from the Middle East have been scanned, and they're seeing amazing information displaying on the screen.
Oh, really? In the stone?
In the stone itself.
Like a CD or a DVD?
And remember, Zechariah Sitchin says that the round stones with the hole in the middle, called maze, were like their hard drives. They stored their blueprints and their data and information on it. And now we have CDs which are round with a hole in the middle made of plastic, and we do the same thing. Well, because certain types of stone have Casimir kind of plates, imagine little razor blades really close together, and in between it is stone, you can trap vibrations in there. And there's millions of tiny, tiny flakelets in granite and stones like that. And so there's actual information that you can trap in stone. But when you activate it with a laser, you can retrieve that data. You can actually retrieve it. And that's not so, far-fetched to think. If plastic has memory, then why not, crystal? Why not stone? So, going with that, I mean, this whole thing on differential starts to get more and more amazing because let's go into just kind of a little detour into anti-gravity, because we think, how could the pyramids, actually teleport a boat, which could be a spaceship, from Earth to Orion instantaneously and not even travel through the fabric of space? Well, going back to my guy at Lockheed, Boyd Bushman, he gives me the secret to anti-gravity according to how Lockheed is doing it. This is really amazing because he shows me this experiment, which I'll recap really quickly, that he takes, if you take two magnets and you face them north-north or south-south, they push against each other, right? Well, he takes two $5,000 super magnets and he bolts them together. They're in the shape of a donut so that they're pushing against each other so hard it produces a field. And he wraps that in a plaster to make it look like a rock, and he revisits Galileo, and he drops an ordinary rock next to his north-north magnets off his own Leaning Tower of Pisa. And according to Galileo and Newton, whether you drop a pin and a hammer together at the same time, they all fall towards gravity at the same speed. Well, Boyd Bushman's north-north magnets fell slower all the 9 times that he dropped them. Well, what's interesting is what he does next is Lockheed builds nuclear-powered electromagnets, and they face each other in the same fashion. Well, the way you make an electromagnet, you take a shaft of iron and you wrap copper wire clockwise around a shaft of iron, right? And then you do another one and you wrap it clockwise around the shaft of iron. And when you run electricity through that, you get 2 poles that are identical. So let's say north-north or south-south, right? But when you spin in your mind in 3D, that that clockwise component magnet around behind the other one so they face each other, it looks counterclockwise to the first one's clockwise. Hence, all the way back to my dream about the UFOs, clockwise, anti-clockwise spinning. Well, when he showed me a crane at Lockheed Martin lowering this giant nuclear-powered electromagnet into the belly of a classified aircraft, and it flew using anti-gravity. That was done a long time ago at Lockheed, so we know we have it. Well, what's interesting about that is that when Lockheed did it, it was very, very primitive. There was a lot of radiation. They got anti-gravity, but it used the counter-rotational spinning of magnetic fields against each other. Now, Boyd Bushman does this other experiment with me where he takes this little thing called a celt or a rattleback, which you can search that on Google. It looks like a little plastic canoe. And when you spin it counterclockwise, it spins really, really smooth and really beautifully, very balanced. When you spin it clockwise, it starts to vibrate, and then it spins back counterclockwise all by itself. And we did this experiment over and over and over again, which proved Newton's third law was violated, that clockwise and anti-clockwise in the natural field of gravity were not equal. There was a vibration produced between the two, which is what's called a differential. And that was the secret to anti-gravity. And so now just imagine, take another little detour to crop circles, because, it was revealed to me by very profound crop circle researcher Barbara Lamb that inside the circles, they found all of the weaves in the circles, the real ones, were clockwise and anti-clockwise right on top of each other with slightly different diameters, which means differentials. Everywhere you saw this in the crop circles. So from there, what I did is I did an experiment, an amazing experiment. I started noticing these vortexes spinning counterclockwise in my swimming pool, our community swimming pool, that were like a black shadow on the bottom of a blue pool that had this spiraling, kind of like a Milky Way galaxy, spinning counterclockwise into the center that was black. And I decided to film it so that I could study the photography. And when I took the photography into my editing bay, this black counter-spinning, it looks like a galaxy spinning in the bottom of my pool. On top of it, a clockwise, bright radial lines were spinning clockwise right on top of the counterclockwise spin. And at 9 o'clock, if you think of a clock at the 9 o'clock position, the clockwise and anti-clockwise waves were producing interference patterns. And when I slowed the frames down and took pictures, this is all in my book, you could actually see this. In the interference patterns, all of the geometries known to humanity are there. Cubes, triangles, pyramids, rectangles start to form. And as they form, and you can clearly see them in the differential vibrations between clockwise and anti-clockwise, you're realizing, oh my God, this is creation happening right before our eyes. This is how the crop circle's counter-rotational spins, producing a harmonic vibration, produces all these geometries that we're seeing in the crop circles. And not only that, all of the elements on the periodic table have their own actual geometries. For example, even on the quantum level, quarks are hexagons. There's 6 quarks in a hexagon and 6 anti-quarks in the opposite hexagon, just like the natural quartz crystal, 6-sided. So what I was seeing there, and you can see this, eventually the architectures form a donut or a toroid. And you're seeing this and saying, how are two counter-rotational waves even spinning against each other with slightly different diameters in my swimming pool and producing all of the architectures known to man? And then you start to understand that when you look back at that natural 6-sided crystal, which has unequal sides, you realize, oh my God, that was created by two waves that opposed each other to actually manifest this crystal. So if I do the math, clockwise and anti-clockwise, I will know the harmonic codes that created this crystal.
David, when we come back, let's talk about how you plan to contact ETs. Indeed it is, and we'll take your phone calls next hour with David Sarita. When we come right back, let's find out how he believes hidden harmonic codes can help us make ET contact. David, a couple days